Marsha Blackburn. Senator, thank you so much for being with us tonight. So when you hear fellow Democrats on Capitol Hill, admitting we want all these illegal immigrants to stay in the country, to me it signals that they've now found a new constituency just based on the way that they're behaving, including Senator Chris Van Hollen, who shares a chamber with you.
Yes, indeed. They are saying the quiet part out loud. And what we know, Katie, is that they are admitting the intentionality of the Biden administration leaving the border open and the intentionality of the Biden administration trying so hard to make illegal legal. And now you have the Democrats trying even harder, saying, oh, well, they're here. Let's let them have a pathway to citizenship. And they're completely out of touch with the American people. I talk to Tennesseans every day who are wanting to see more deportations. They want to get the criminal illegal aliens out of this country. They want to make certain that those who entered the country illegally are deported. They do not want them to have citizenship. They do not want them to have a path to legalization. And what they want to do is return to the rule of law. And that is why the actions of these judges are just so astounding to most American citizens, that they would actually try to take care of an illegal alien before they would do their job of enforcing the law, respecting the rule of law, and standing for the American people first.
Senator, you mentioned these out-of-control judges who keep, stepping in the way, issuing these nationwide injunctions when the president or the executive branch is trying to deport people who simply just walked to the country under Joe Biden and are allowed to stay. So is there something that Capitol Hill can do in terms of bolstering the ability for the executive branch to move more quickly on these deportations without this interference from these activist judges?
Absolutely, and yes, indeed. When you look at Article 3 of the Constitution, there is nothing in there, nor is there anything in statute that gives a judge the right to go in and block and obstruct the work of the executive branch of the president. There is nothing that says they can take these orders that affect the country and do these nationwide injunctions. So we do have legislation that would address that. It's also there in the House. Indeed, when it comes to the border and tightening up on these asylum rules and making certain the money is there, which we are currently doing to secure the southern and the northern border, so that we get the illegal entry of these illegal aliens, of drugs, of human trafficking, sex trafficking, under control. Those are actions that we can take. We also can make certain through the process of appropriations and budgeting that there is not money that is going to be allowed to be spent on some of these activities that the Democrats are wanting to put in place, or that these activist judges are wanting to carry out, and we do that through instruction language in the budget.
Yeah, power of the purse is an important thing in Congress, especially when it comes to making sure that people who shouldn't be in the country get deported as quickly as possible. Senator Blackburn, thank you so much.